So I'm at Peck's Corner Knob Shelter this morning. I think that's the name of it. It rained pretty much all night, more than was forecast, I think. And everything was drenched this morning, and I had to put on wet socks, wet shoes, wet pants, wet shirt, wet everything. Not fun, and it's thankfully not as cold as it could be, but it's still cold, so I'm going to pack up and get moving as soon as possible, and hopefully some of my things will dry just from body heat as I go, but I'm freezing my ass off. That white blaze says I'm back on the Appalachian Trail. Last night we had to go down the Hughes Ridge Trail to the Peck's Corner Shelter, which the sign says 0.4. I think it was probably closer to 0.5, which is what AWOL says. And it literally was a river the whole way. And it kept getting narrower and more remote and less maintained, and I started getting nervous that maybe I'd read the sign wrong when I finally saw a preview, which is always a good sign of a shelter coming up. So anyway, I was warm in the shelter. It was not a bad night. I actually slept pretty well in the shelter last night. I was warm and dry, thank God. But with the rain and the humidity, everything that was wet stayed wet, and other things got kind of damp. So I'm praying for some sunshine to come out eventually, and I'm also hoping that the 5.6 that I have to do today will go by quickly so I can get dry and warm. I also need to check on my stove. It wasn't working this morning. It would light and then it would go out, and so I didn't have my hot oatmeal for breakfast, and I had to forego my coffee. Fruit Loops were the breakfast of the day. So not ideal start. Not feeling extremely joyful this morning, but I'm glad to be here. So there's that, but it's raining again, and yeah, just gonna be a wet, soggy hike, I think, but hopefully it will be enjoyable nonetheless, and we shall see. I'll check in later. I think I've gone about 1.1 miles, just came up these rocks that usually lead to beautiful views. On rainy days, they're kind of slick and somewhat treacherous, but I noticed as I was going by this elevation mark, I don't know if you can see it, it says 5849, so we're still pretty high up. Even so, I'm getting my breath and I'm getting stronger, which is really nice. I'm enjoying that aspect of hiking. It is soggy. Alright, it's another misty morning. This is the Tri-Corner Knob Shelter where we stayed last night. It's real convenient. We've got privy is just right down there, close enough that you can see if somebody's there without having to walk the whole trail. And the water sources are right here. Very convenient. And it was packed full last night. There's not much space around here to camp. There's just a ravine down there. And but everybody was cold and wet. And it was not the most beautiful day in the Smokeys yesterday, so I didn't shoot much, but hopefully we'll maybe get a little sunshine today as we head down to Cosby Knob. It's only 7.7 miles, and I am hoping to get warm and dry because my quilt got a little bit wet overnight, and I am slightly terrified of hypothermia, so I don't want to be sleeping with a wet quilt, but it's the kind of day where everything is wet. So I just got going northbound, and from here you can look down and see the shelter right there. There's the back of the shelter. And obviously there's no space around a camp, maybe a little room for a hammock, and that's it. And I mentioned everything is cold and wet, and it can be kind of hard to deal when everything is frozen. Right now my hands are frozen. I don't know the temperature. I haven't checked my thermometer, but I would guess it's about 38. My fingers are numb, and you get dry overnight and then you have to go put on wet socks, wet shoes. That's pretty brutal. One trick though that we've been sharing with people in the shelters is that if your clothes are damp and you lay them under your sleeping pad at night, the body heat will help them dry. So thankfully this morning my pants and my shirt for hiking were pretty much dry. My rain gear, which had been hanging up overnight, was still damp, but my base layer was pretty good. And I'm hoping that as I get to hiking, my hands will warm up because my gloves are still soaking wet, and even my overgloves went soaked through yesterday, my rain mitts. So I don't have much to keep my hands warm. We are here just at another trail crossing. This is the Balsam Ridge Trail and the AT. So try putting on. I was just that one where I came from. And we're going to keep going that way. So that one just might end up being the highlight of my day. We'll see. It's early yet, but look at that. There's blue sky over there and a little tiny bit of sunshine on the mountain. So I am hoping that that is a sign of good things to come, at least for a little while. One thing about putting on wet shoes is that the laces don't want to stay tied, and so I just had to stop and retie my shoes. Another thing about wet shoes is that even though your feet might warm up, it's important to have wool socks because wool does keep your feet warm, keeps anything warm, I guess, even when it's wet. And a lot of other fabrics don't share that property. So wool socks are great even in the summertime. That little patch of forest down there looks really pretty with the light shining on it. There's still a bit of a creek to walk through. But coming up from the other side, it was really dark. And before I even got to it, I was just hiking along, I guess thinking about my day. We've got about a mile up and then I think 7 miles or so down, give or take. And down never means straight down, it's usually bumpy. Anyway, so I was just hiking along and this guy comes up behind me and I have no idea how I didn't hear him. But he was about 3 feet behind me before I heard him. Needless to say, I about jumped out of my skin. I didn't think he was a bear or anything, but it just totally startled me because I was doing my own little thing, just hiking, and I knew, you know, who left out of the shelter and who was ahead of me and who was behind me, at least from where I stayed. So he must have been coming from someplace else and he was booking it, but got right up on my tail and just made me jump. So just a word of warning. Or courtesy when you're out hiking. If you're coming up on somebody who's solo hiking, give them a little warning. Clear your throat, cough, say hello, something. So you wouldn't want somebody to just jump and fall off a cliff, which around here could be a hazard, as you can see right there. That's a pretty steep one. This section along here is kind of pretty. It's amazing how many trees are down. But I guess the National Park Service doesn't come in and take out dead trees, so when they fall they just stay where they lay and get covered over with moss. So it's kind of pretty, very green in here. And I just checked gut hooks and I'm at like mile 1.1. It's 9:03, or it was 9:03, and I started at 8:20. So with a couple of stops to shoot video and get a drink of water, I'm doing pretty well. I've been setting little goals for myself. My aim is to get to an average of about 2 miles an hour, maybe 2.5 when I really get strong. But I've been sick for the past few days. I had a massive allergy attack Monday night in the hotel before we left. I don't know why. I went to bed and I thought it was something in the hotel, but it carried over and just like kind of cough and cold symptoms, and with the weather and being wet, not a good combo. In fact, I was really worried about getting pneumonia. Yesterday I just spent the whole day coughing, and even last night. And then I was worried about 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I was real warm, and the coughing kind of just suddenly stopped. And I hope it's gone. It's not fun to be sick out here, but it definitely slows me down, particularly on the uphill climbs. So anyway, my goal today, a little more than, or a little less than 2 miles an hour, I guess. I hope to get into the shelter by about 1:30. That's accounting for some breaks and things. And based on how crowded it was at Tri-Corner Knob last night, it's probably going to be pretty crowded at the one that we're going to tonight. So hopefully I will get there in time to get a bunk and be able to spread out my quilt and maybe get it to dry out a little bit before it's time to go to bed. Because I certainly don't want to go to sleep on a cold night in a wet quilt. But I do always have my emergency blanket for what it's worth. Not ideal, but you know, that's why you carry it, just in case. The terrain along here has been pretty level, which is very nice, and I was just booking along and come to see this nice little waterfall. There's plenty of water on the trail, as you can see, but not that many little waterfalls, so that's
kind of cool. Nice to stop and appreciate. One other thing I was thinking about this morning is that just thinking back to when I got back to hiking in September after I broke my foot in July, and I was so cautious about where to put my feet. I had to really think through every single step, and I am getting much more confident and adept at just kind of looking ahead and knowing where to step, and that is also helping a lot with my hiking speed, which is great. Now I do have these little tripping hazards on the toes of my shoes, which are a little hard to see. I tried gluing them. The very tip is coming off there. I tried gluing them with some shoe glue when I was at Lonnie's place, but it didn't stay. So I'm trying to decide now if I should try gluing again or just cut that little piece off. But of course it is somewhat protective. So that's a toss-up. I'll make that decision eventually, but hopefully before they trip me and cause me to get hurt. So anyway, little things. The trail's definitely hard on the gear. Sorry for the coughing. There's a cool view there. This is a little hard to see, but the mountains are peeking right through the clouds. It's kind of neat. Now this is gorgeous. You can see all the way down into the valley, and then all the mist over the mountains. Really incredible. How's that for a view? Right over there. Clouds rolling in over here. It's a pretty little clearing here too. It is 10:19, so I've been hiking for just about 2 hours, and I just got to this sign that says the Cosby Knob, which is where we're going, is 3.9. I've come 3.7, so I'm about halfway through my hike in 2 hours, which is pretty good. And then if you go the other direction, you can take this Snake Den Ridge Trail to the Cosby Campground. So that could be a little confusing, Cosby Campground versus Cosby Knob. But I'm staying on the AT, following those white blazes over there. And at the rate I'm going, I might get in by, dare I say, 12:30. That would be amazing. I'm going to say 1, just to be safe. But look at, there's still some sunshine down there, some views, and some cool rocks. Loving the rocks, always cool rocks. But I did stop and take off my pack cover because I realized it was probably holding in a lot of moisture. And since, thank God, the rain has held off for a little while, hopefully it'll continue to hold off. But I might as well try to dry out my pack a bit, and maybe even my fleece, which has been soggy for 2 days, so I couldn't wear it. So I'm gonna cross my fingers that a little bit of drier air will work to my benefit. And my shoes have been dried out, or they seem to dry out a couple times, and then I come to places like this, they're all mud, and they get wet again.